And on a cloudy day. I don't let people tune in to hear me sing, Libby. What do you think? Think people immediately think about turning on something else? Let's listen to the Brady Quinn show on 940 Wins and see what they're talking about today. You know, the draft is coming up. Some draft is coming up, that's for sure. The NBA draft, that would be you. I begin this way for a reason, and it's not five reasons, probably just one, right? Because this is known around South Florida and around the sporting world as the dog days of summer. Not a lot to bet on, not necessarily a ton to talk about. Major League Baseball, as big a fan as you might be this time of the year, it's not the most compelling action. We're not talking about postseason berths or playoff jockeying for position or the postseason. And we just came out of just a sensational, scintillating period of time here, especially where we are based in South Florida here on Five Reasons Sports Network. Couldn't have asked for much more, could you? Did you go cold turkey last night? I'm Jeff DeForce. That is Mike Lubie Lubitz. How did you feel about last night having no activity in the postseason involving the Panthers and the Heat? I did watch some Yankees Mets. Sort of baffled. It's interesting. In New York, you would think they were playing a World Series. It's the so-called Subway Series, and last night's game was a wild one. Mike Lubie Lubitz, with the Mets making a series of blunders, including allowing a steal of home. Can you imagine? How do you go from the windup when there's a guy on third base that runs like a 4.140? That's ridiculous. And Kiner Falefa of the Yankees steals home. He would have had it anyway because the catcher was unable to snare the pitch, which was high and away. But he was already sliding into home plate before the ball ever got there. And I mean, just crazy that they let this guy walk in a tight ball game. That was well pitched. It was a great pitcher's duel for a long period of time. 6 innings worth of Garrett Cole versus Justin Verlander. Both guys were on their game. Mike Louie Lubitz, and then once it got to the seventh inning, and Booney and Showalter were starting to match wits as managers, and you're thinking, who's going to win that? I don't know. I think Showalter is a shot fighter at this point. Watching those Mets, I mean, horrendous play by the New York Mets in the game, and yet they came out on top 4-3 to salvage the last game of the series. And I'm looking at the Yankees. I mean, how good of a manager do you have to be to manage these guys? They're top three hitters in the order. You know me, and I'll hang up with batting average, but I think it's a good barometer, good measuring stick. They had Bowers batting first, 222. That equates out to two for every nine, Libby, if you were doing the math on that. Giancarlo Stanton, who's been, here's a surprise, Stanton's been out with injuries. But he's back in the lineup, and he's hitting a robust 222 with 6 home runs so far for his $300 million. And then they had Donaldson hitting third with a 130 batting average. Guy's hitting third. He's hitting 130, and he's hitting third in the Yankees order. And this is, June, what? They were talking about the 15th, midway through June. You have a third place hitter that's hitting 130. No wonder you're not sending to the top of the American League East. But you would have thought that this was a World Series game, the way it's being covered. And ESPN, I mean, was just absolutely salivating all over this matchup. And for 6 innings, very entertaining. It ended up going 10. But dog days of summer, can we make enough out of that to get through till when? Till September? Will we see you guys in September when the football season rolls around? How do you cover all of this period of time? I think this may be worse than the COVID when we had no sports for 6 months, especially after the high that we were on. I mean, that was just tremendous. Every day was a no-brainer here on the show. It was great. Throw open a microphone. Yeah, you think the Panthers can do it? What about the Heat? You get all well immersed and dive deeply into NBA off-season transactions, which always used to kind of piss me off that you would emphasize that so heavily while we were on the radio there. 4 hours of Luby going, well, you know what? If they could get a 2, then they could get a 3, and maybe they got trade. I don't know. I mean, there is some stuff going on there on that front. How are you, by the way, Mike Luby Lewis? How are you doing today? And what is your thought on all this? Because we did have a sensational play. I don't know if you caught or saw anything about the end of the Marlins game against the Mariners last night.
Oh, yeah. Sanchez, robbed the grand slam?
What were the chances that they were even going to be in a position to tie that game? None. Zero. You bring in A.J. Puck, who was your most reliable reliever, I guess. I mean, he's kind of assumed the closer role, and you bring him in a non-save situation where the Marlins are up 4-0, and the Mariners had done nothing during that ballgame. This guy, Yuli Perez, was sensational. He gives up a couple of hits in 6 innings. They're not letting him go too deeply into ball games. And he gives up no runs. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the bases are loaded and there's one away. And at the plate is another cheesy 216 hitter, Eugenio Suarez. And what does he do? Boom! There it goes, deep right field. And Jesus Sanchez did literally take the ball from off. It was going out, and it would have been 4-4-4. And I was thinking at the time, well, what if this guy hits a grand slam? Well, what are the odds of that? And so he did rob them, and the Marlins held on and won that ball game 4-1. So they're still 7 games now over 500, and on their way to Washington, which is the weakest of teams in the National League East, and they begin a weekend series there. I would assume a 3-game series against the Nationals, with a good chance at 3-3 on the road trip to come back with a winning record on the road, and perhaps be 8 or 9 games above 500 at this stage in the season. Is that enough, Lubie, to carry us through? What do you think we're going to have to focus in on? Can we make fun of Nick Saban for the next couple of months? What are people going to do? Because I was listening to some sports talk shows on the radio yesterday, which, by the way, I don't like to knock anybody in the business, but is that it? That's all we got? One station with 3 shows? Not a lot of alternatives there. If you want to punch around and say, hey, wait a minute. Remember when we had like 6 sports stations in town and they were all broadcasting with live shows?
Mhm.
What happened? Is the industry that dead? What? I mean, and it's not like, I hate to say it, but I don't think these shows were overwhelmingly scintillating, at least not the one I was listening to. It was like, well, what are these guys talking about? I don't even know. Maybe people are thinking the same thing about us. Sorry, guys. I didn't mean to demean or diminish the fact that you guys were talking about something that had absolutely zero meaning to me, and certainly was not anywhere in the sporting world. It wasn't like they were talking politics either, which I would imagine this station has an edict. Don't talk any politics.
Oh, I'm sure.
You'll never hear anything that rhymes with chump on the station. But yeah, I mean, these guys were really floundering around and had nothing, no focus whatsoever. What do you think? I mean, I'm okay with talking about virtually anything. You know that, Lubie. And there's a variety of things. There are a variety of things on the menu here, including today's beginning of the U.S. Open. Which, are we only approaching that from the standpoint of is there a way for us to make money on this? Interestingly, in a footnote to the beginning of the U.S. Open, Lubie, Jay Monahan, the commissioner who sold out all of his loyal players on the PGA Tour and made us wonder what exactly is the PGA Tour, and further, what do they stand for? Well, weren't they always kind of steeped in the idea that the PGA Tour was all about goodness and light, even though they had what would seem to be obvious racist and misogynistic practices, where they were more than happy to play and be welcomed at clubs that didn't allow black people or women to be part of their clientele and part of their little society there. No problem with that whatsoever. But Monahan all of a sudden is taken ill. You think, could he possibly fallen victim to guilt? No. Probably trying to figure out what to do with the $50 million of Saudi money. All of a sudden, he's disappeared. He's ceded his duties to somebody else and said, "I'm not feeling so good." I hope he's okay. I mean, I don't wish disease or sickness or illness on anybody, but wow, kind of mysterious, huh? Here, the Live Tour guys and the PGA guys are getting together. We don't know if that's going to happen too often, other than the 4 majors, which aren't regulated by the PGA. And is it the PGA anymore, or is it the Live Tour, or which is gonna fold? Everybody's still thinking that it's business as usual, and eventually the Live Tour is going to go out of business. But how can they when they're now merged with the PGA? And what's going to happen today when Brooks Koepka tees it up with Rory McIlroy? I would watch that for all 18 holes, wouldn't you? And I hope they isolate on just these 2 guys, and that would be great. It's a shame to diminish, our national championship in a great game of golf down to this, where all we want to do is see 2 guys dueling with 9 irons, like Zorro there and Sergeant Garcia. Take that, Sarge. Yeah, it'll be interesting. So what is going to be your area of focus, Libby? I don't mean to put you on the spot here. It's kind of like being in a job interview and the guy says, well, what are your 5-year goals and what are your 10-year goals? And you just got out of college. You don't have any goals. Your goal is to, get a job so your parents get off your freaking back. I don't know. What do you think? What'll be the central focus of the sporting world for the next month and a half until we get around to football? What do you think?
I'm hoping the Marlins stay around this level of play. I mean, that's the kind of thing that can stem the tide. and then the Heat keep throwing out rumors. I mean, those are the two things that can fill a month of dead. Because once the Dolphins get into like preseason stuff, late July, August, you can talk about that. It's just hard to talk about camp. Like people try to. I don't know how.
Even more so now when there is nothing going on. I mean, absolutely nothing going on in the preseason or training camp.
Yeah, I mean,
They've rendered that completely meaningless, have they not?
yeah. Look, the preseason we can lie to ourselves still, sort of. It's not like it used to be, but we could. But I mean, June, July, it's tough to talk football. Like it's just
A little early. I would agree with you there. It is funny though. The Heat are always rumored, in connection with any player that all of a sudden either becomes available or disgruntled or whatever,
Mhm.
or a team wants to cut ties with them because they happen to be making such an enormous amount of money that they could never even conceive of winning a game while still retaining somebody like, in this case, Bradley Beal is the latest subject of that talk. And of course, the Heat are one of the teams that would be maybe a viable trade possibility for Bradley Beal. They're going to get Damian Lillard. I think even Zion might be coming to the Miami Heat. What do you think? Zion Williamson, has he worn out his welcome there at the Pelicans? They just think he's a lazy fat fuck. What do you think? Lazy fat fuck's a little strong.
No, it's not actually. I feel bad because I was all in on the Zion bandwagon, but the dude's been hurt every year. And last year he wasn't even hurt; they just weren't playing him because I still don't know what was wrong with him. Last half of the
Well,
year,
he was claiming that he's going to come back to play when Zion felt like Zion.
yeah, exactly.
Remember that one? That was a good one.
Manny Ramirez was a Hall of Famer until Roy's when he pulled that move. Like Zion's too young to be pulling. Bro, you're like 22, bud. Like you just got a deal that you didn't deserve. Play the goddamn game. Like look, and I was all in on Zion, but come on, this is a joke.
He should be being discussed in the same parameters as like Jokic, and yet that's not happening. I mean, he just hasn't played enough.
Like that's the thing with him is like when he plays, he's really good. So it's not like he's a bust. He
No.
just I like lazy fat fuck.
Will any of these guys become members? Here's the question for you, Lou. Will any of these guys become members of the Miami Heat? Zion, obviously, that's a little far fetched, but certainly Beal and Lillard have been discussed heavily, and everybody. But when they ask a player, "Hey, can you name a couple of destinations you might want to go?" They all say Miami Heat. They all want to be part of the culture. So the question would be: will either of those guys be members of the Miami Heat, and will Tyler Hero be on the Heat roster next year?
I don't think there's any way Hero's on the Heat again. I just don't
Wow.
yeah, I don't see it. I'm like he's either been horrible in the playoffs or hurt 4 years. Like what else do you need to see? This look, Scoop said it, Mr. Five Reasons himself. Like going into the playoffs, this was the year they were going to see. Okay, can he be that third guy? Because that's the thing. He can't. He's not. They just paid him a crap load of money.
Yes.
They didn't pay him to be role player guy. They paid him to be the guy when Bam is scoring 2 points and a half, but you have Hero to give you 12 to be the running mate with Jimmy Butler.
I think they're looking for him to be even steadier than that. I mean, the occasional flashes that you would get from Tyler Hero are not enough to justify him being, somebody that was tying up that much, money in your salary cap. And, also, I mean, let's face it, the Mick isn't a charity there, Mickey Harrison. Does he really want to give a guy, what was it, like $130 million he got?
He didn't get a Robinson deal. He got the deal, the next level. He didn't get a Bam deal, but he didn't get he got in the middle. He got a mini max where it was a real deal that you give a guy that is going to be a all-star. I mean, that's what you paid him that for. And then look, and I get it. He was playing well in that game. And look, a broken hand is fluky or compared to some of his other injuries.
You can't fault a guy for hurting himself diving for a ball.
But it is what it is. Like the most important ability is availability. And as stupid and cliche as it is, it's the truth. The dude's been hurt 3 of the 4 playoff runs in his 4 years. It's just point blank. That's just
he's just not consistent enough for me. That's my problem with Tyler Hero.
Oh, that's too.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to be any big force on the defensive end or even a mild presence there, then and your primary thing is look, the guy was brought into the NBA because he was going to be a scorer.
Yep.
And he's capable of being that, but is he capable of being that consistently enough for you to think, okay, this is a guy that I can count on night in and night out? And if he has the occasional off night or maybe wears down like Jimmy Butler did, that's one thing. But I don't think that you can pay. You know what? It's not my money, so I don't usually judge players. Necessarily based on salary alone. If a guy's making a whopping sum and he's not trying, you can obviously fault the person and say, "Hey, I'm not a big fan of that player." Hero always gives it an effort, but he's just wildly inconsistent. For a guy that was a sixth man of the year and averaged over 20 points again and had similar numbers as he did when he received that award, even though he wasn't eligible because he was in the starting lineup primarily for the Miami Heat last year. Anyway, we'll answer those questions. See, we have all summer to develop these teams. Should the Heat trade Tyler Hero?
I just don't see
More
him.
on that tomorrow. How about that? That's something to get excited about. As we'll see you tomorrow, the next edition of for Mike Lubie Lubitz. I'm Jeff DeForest. The next edition of Defo on 5.